Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Khurram Shehzad. I am from National University of Modern Languages. Today again I would like to talk about adjectives. One of the topics that we could not talk about in our last two videos was gradable and non-gradable adjectives. So today I would like to focus that on gradable and non-gradable adjectives. Adjectives are describing words. Most adjectives have a meaning which can be made stronger or weaker. These are called gradable adjectives. Other adjectives have a meaning which is extreme or absolute and cannot easily be made stronger or weaker because already they are on the extreme level of decline of the scale. These are called ungradable adjectives. The differences in the way we use these two kinds of adjectives can cause problems even for advanced students. Modifying gradable adjectives. Gradable adjectives represent a point on a scale. For example, cheap and expensive are adjectives on the scale of how much something costs. Ungradable adjectives represent the limits of a scale. Ungradable adjectives will be on the limits of the scale. But gradable adjectives, they are on the point of a scale. They can move around. They can go up. They can come down. But the non-gradable adjectives, they are on the extreme points of the scale. So you can look at this slide. Ungradable adjectives, limit of the scale. And gradable adjectives, they are between the scale, on different points of the scale. So free, that is ungradable. Priceless, ungradable. Because already something is priceless. Already something is free. So what kind of grade we can create? No way. But cheap, it can have very cheap. It can have not very cheap. Expensive, it can have a bit expensive or very expensive. So we can move around the scale. Freezing, so it's on the top, on the corner, on the level of the scale. Boiling, so something which is boiling, we cannot make it a gradable. So it is already ungradable, boiling or freezing. But cold, it has got comparative and degree, superlative degrees. So cold, colder, coldest. But freezing, it cannot be more freezing. It cannot be most freezing. Boiling, it cannot be boilinger. It cannot be more boiling. It is already on the limit of the scale. Hot, hotter, hottest. So large, larger, largest. Small, smaller, smallest. But minute. So it is already on the limit of the scale. Vast or enormous, they are already on the limit of the scale. We can make comparative and superlative forms of all gradable adjectives. So this is what I have just done. We can make gradable adjectives stronger with very, but not with the adverb absolutely. Remember this point. The new jacket looks absolutely expensive. Wrong. Because something which is gradable, it can take very here. That new jacket looks very expensive. There are several other modifiers which we can use to strengthen the meaning of these adjectives, such as so, rather, really, extremely, terribly, most, which is formal, pretty, which is informal. Last night's match was terribly exciting. I felt pretty upset after the accident. So pretty upset is informal. The chapter on the early sonnets was most instructive, formal way of saying it. We often use less common adverbs to modify certain gradable adjectives. Although very is commonly used to strengthen any adjective, your English will sound more fluent and natural if you learn to use other combinations of adverbs and adjectives. I was bitterly disappointed at my exam result. My brother is painfully shy. The students in this school are highly intelligent, painfully shy, bitterly disappointed. Note that we can often use certain adverbs with certain adjectives. Gradable adjectives can usually be made weaker by the words fairly, slightly, a little bit, which is informal, and somewhat, which is again formal. I have been feeling slightly dizzy all morning. My friend was a bit drunk, informal way of saying or writing. The police reported that the man was somewhat inebriated, somewhat again, formal way of saying it. In conversation, a bit is a useful way to make a critical remark more polite. A bit. You are a bit overdressed, aren't you? So it's a polite way of saying it. The end of term test wasn't very long and it wasn't at all difficult. With gradable adjectives, quite usually means fairly but can have other meanings. The different meanings are only apparent in spoken English as they are dependent on stress and intonation. Yes, how you are saying it. The lecture was quite interesting, fairly interesting. Quite interesting. So stress is on adjective interesting, more interesting than the speaker expected. And if the stress is on quite, then it means that it is less expected than the speaker expected. Quite interesting. Modifying ungradable adjectives. Ungradable adjectives such as enormous, vast, tiny, priceless, free have a meaning which represents the limit of a scale. So they usually do not have comparative or superlative forms. For example, the limits of the scale of how much something costs are free. It costs nothing, and priceless. Its cost is too great to be counted. Priceless means its cost is too great to be counted, and free means that it costs nothing. And we do not use very to make them stronger. So with absolute or with ungradable adjectives, the word very cannot be used. The Ming vases are more valuable than the Egyptian mummies. So more priceless we cannot say. It will become wrong because priceless is non-gradable adjective. Very free we cannot say because free is already on the limit of the scale. Entrance to the museum is absolutely free, but not very free, absolutely free. A common way to intensify the meaning of ungradable adjectives is with the adverb absolutely. We use this device to add emphasis in spoken and informal English. It is not common in writing. The water was absolutely freezing. Again, it's a spoken way of saying it. In writing, we do not expect from you that you are going to do this thing. The show was absolutely fabulous. When we use quite with ungradable adjectives, it has a similar meaning to completely, emphasizing the strength of the adjective. The tenor's performance was quite amazing. You are quite correct. Although we use absolutely with many ungradable adjectives, there are some adjectives which are never intensified with absolutely, and some where we prefer to use other intensifying adverbs such as completely, totally, and utterly. For example, I am afraid your answer is completely wrong. So, this is what you can say. Since the accident, Harry has been totally deaf in one ear. Susan was utterly appalled by her husband's dishonesty. We can also use a most before ungradable adjectives used before a noun. Hillary has a most amazing hairstyle. So hairstyle is noun, amazing is adjective, and most can be used here. We do not usually make ungradable adjectives weaker by using the modifiers fairly or a little bit or somewhat or not very. So we cannot say it's not very fabulous. We cannot say it's a slightly priceless vase. But we do use almost, nearly, particularly, and virtually to indicate a point close to the absolute meaning of ungradable adjectives. He never turns the heating on. It is practically freezing in there. The battery in my calculator is almost dead. After 6 months with the disease, he was nearly deaf and virtually blind. Dear students, in today's video, I have talked about gradable and non-gradable adjectives. Gradable adjectives have got different points on the climb, on the scale, but non-gradable adjectives or ungradable adjectives, they are on the limits of the scale. So in their use, you should be careful. Gradable adjectives have got comparative and superlative forms, and ungradable adjectives, they do not have comparative or superlative forms. Thank you very much.